This video is about graphing inequalities in two variables. You should take these notes on page 90 of your interactive notebook or paste them into your interactive notebook later. I'm going to start by introducing the fact that graphing a linear inequality such as this one is quite a bit like graphing a linear equation. This is still considered slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, or y, whatever the sign is, mx plus b. Which means we know, even though it's an inequality and not an equation, we know what our slope is, and we know what our y-intercept is. If you don't remember how to find a slope and a y-intercept from a slope-intercept form equation, please go back in your notes and look and remind yourself, give yourself a refresher course. So we're going to start out by graphing a line, just as if we were graphing an equation. We know how to do this. We start with our y-intercept, which in this case is -1. That's our y-intercept. And then we're going to use our slope to find our next point. So we're going to rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. We got a line that's looking roughly like this. Okay? So that is the first part of graphing an inequality. You just graph it as if you were graphing a line, an equation. Now let's look at the inequality. What we're going to do, because we have an inequality, is we're going to color or shade in half of this coordinate plane. We're either going to shade this half plane or we're going to shade this half plane. We're either going to shade below the line or we're going to shade above the line. So in order to find out which half plane we need to shade, we need to pick a test point. We need to pick a test point. I like to do test points that are easy math. Some good test points are 0, 0, 1, 1, because those are easy math. So we're going to pick 0, 0 as our test point today. Zeros are easy math. Here's our test point right here. Our test point is above the line. We're going to substitute our test point into excuse me, the inequality. So we all know what it means to substitute a value for a variable. Y is greater than or equal to 2x minus 1. Y is 0. X is 0. Okay? And then we're going to solve. 0 is greater than or equal to 2 times 0 is 0 minus 1. True or false? Well, is 0 greater than or equal to -1? Yes. 0 is greater than -1. So that is a true statement. So we're going to shade the side, the plane that includes our test point. So shade the side of the test point. Okay, so that means we're going to shade above the line because our test point is above the line. We're just going to shade the whole half plane. The whole thing. That whole half plane gets shaded. Now that is a complete graph of this inequality. You're going to have some sort of line and you're going to have some sort of half plane shading for every inequality you graph. Let me show you what this graph would look like if it was a little different. What's different about this inequality is that sign. It doesn't say or equal to. Otherwise, it's exactly the same as the one I just graphed, correct? So there's no or equal to. It just says y is greater than 2x minus 1. Okay. So we're going to use a dotted line or a dashed line instead of a solid line because there's no equal to. If there's no equal to, you're not going to make a solid line. We're going to make the same little line here, but this time we are not making a solid line. We're making a dashed line. We don't need to use our test point because we already tested it up here. And we know that 0 is greater than -1, so we're going to shade the top. So everything about this graph looks the same except for the line. If your sign is greater than or less than, use a dashed line. If your sign is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, use a solid line. Write that down. That might be on a homework quiz. So make sure you pause the video or go backwards if you need to. Get all these notes down. Take your notes very carefully. Be ready for a homework quiz. And of course, like always, I have a problem for you to try. So, sorry about my goof. So it says, graph the inequality. Y is less than x minus 4. So remember, you're going to find your slope. You're going to find your y-intercept. You're going to graph the line, starting with your y-intercept, and then using your slope to find the next point. Pay attention to the sign. Are you going to use a dashed line or a solid line for this graph? Okay, and then you're going to use a test point, 0, 0, 1, 1, basically any point that you'd like to use. And you're going to test it in the inequality, and you're going to see where to shade, which half plane to shade. So if you need to rewind and watch it again, feel free to do that, and be ready for a homework quiz tomorrow. See you then.